Welcome to the Trend Detection Podcast, powered by Siemens. And now your host, Niall Sullivan.
Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Trend Detection Podcast. I'm really pleased to be joined by a familiar face and voice, I guess, as well. My colleague, Richard Ella, all the way in Australia. We're in completely different parts of the world. Listeners will know that who've listened to previous episodes. But today, following on from all of our previous sessions, we've got a really interesting one today. And we're talking about labour shortages, which we know is an issue globally. And we're obviously going to focus on, I guess, Australia in particular today. And then how AI sort of relates to that and maybe help solve some of those challenges as well. Well, I guess before we go into that, Richard, for those who maybe haven't listened to your episodes previously, whoever they are in the world, be good for you to reintroduce yourself maybe before we get started.
No, brilliant, Niall. Thank you for the invite, and I really do love these sessions, and actually listening to the other interviews that you do. I think it's one of the best ways we can actually share knowledge, and in an informal manner. And so, thank you very much. A little bit about me. I work for Siemens Australia. I've been with Siemens Australia nearly 19 years in many different roles in the service industry, and primarily focused on the automation and control, PLCs, drives, in mining applications, renewables. So quite a rich background in the field, but I really wanted to step out of that into value add with data and value add with tools. And so my role today is a digital transformation consultant. As much a big word that is, it's very descriptive because essentially that's exactly what I do. I sit down with our customers, find out where they are in their journey, listen, suggest, and then try and put a plan together for them. And usually Senseye is woven into most of those discussions to get away from this condition-based reactive maintenance. And so really excited about the topic today about how AI is helping us, because we hear about AI so much, but we don't often talk about the result or the actual execution of AI and how it actually can help us and change.
And I guess just before we get started, or maybe we can come on to that actually, but no, I was just thinking is do you think AI is sort of something still seen as like a magic tool and technology we must have, rather than thinking about those sort of outcomes that that it can produce, like Senseye can produce, for example? Is there too much focus on cool tech versus actual outcomes?
Look, I think AI is the new buzzword, like the Internet of Things, and AI is such a big topic, and it's quite funny, it's because in the last year or so it's really come into the news because it's become valuable to so many people. But I still feel people struggle to understand AI and the role that it plays. And that's mainly because we are so used to rules-based systems. And so if this, when that, so basically processing of information. And AI has turned it a little bit on its head, where it's coming up with similar results, but processing it in a different way. And yes, I think the understanding of this is, some people get caught up in the how, but I think people are starting to move beyond trying to understand the inner workings and the black box of AI, and they're starting to just focus on the result. Same thing has happened with every piece of technology that's come our way. I think of the the first PC that I ever bought, the first thing I did was strip it apart and try and understand it and break it down into its PC, its memory, and we really that's how we learned. And AI has done the same thing. So, um, but but now specifically, it's important that when we talk about AI, we need to finish that conversation with whoever you're having at the time, that they understand what AI is to the product that they're talking about. So, you've got machine learning AI, you've got generative AI, you've got vision AI. As I said, there's so much AI algorithms applied at the moment. Is just cutting through the hype and focusing on that result. That's, I think, is very, very important. And the beauty of Senseye is it's articulated very, very well in a very simple flow chart where we've got our case generation, which is traditional machine learning, deep learning AI, bringing it into a centralized location. And then this front end generative AI, where it's got this language learning model. And when you bring those two together, you're having a conversation with a fairly complex network. And the user does not care about the inner workings. They just need to get in, understand what they want, and get out. And the more seamless that is, the better the value.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we can talk about, you mentioned, because predictive maintenance is just one, let's say, AI use cases, but there's others as well. I think we can go into in a sec. But I guess maybe what I should have started with. I got too excited by AI, so I jumped in too soon. But we should probably start with the broader question about, labour shortages in Australia. And this isn't something that's just an Australian issue. I guess it's a global issue. But Richard, we could probably dive into sort of the Australian angle on this, because obviously it's going to be unique compared to other sort of parts of the world as well.
Yeah, look, as you mentioned, labor shortages or skilled labor shortages is getting worse. So I did a couple of quick searches in preparation for this, and by 2050, 40% or 45% of our population is going to be over 55, and it's really important that we try and capture this knowledge in a way that can be shared as our workforce. And I'm part of that aging workforce, and I would love to be able to share my learnings in a way that I know that would benefit a new user. This is what communities are all about. People have been doing it for a very long time, where young people sit down with their elders and they listen to the stories, and this is how we disseminate knowledge. This is how we share experience. But to bring that into the industrial world, things are changing very, very fast. And so we've got a younger generation who just want a 1, 2, 3 click result. And we've got an aging workforce that wants something where they can share their knowledge. And Senseye is beautifully structured to do this. And the reason why this is important here in Australia, we've only got 28 million people, and we're the size of the US, and we've got very isolated communities, and it's especially in the mining industry. We've got basically a fly in, fly out workforce. So we've got some people that fly. They live. They work 800 kilometers away from where they actually live. They just fly in, fly out, and these kind of communities or this kind of workforce puts a lot of strain on the individuals. You can't have this fly in, fly out way of life for a very long time. it's not sustainable. A lot of younger people get into it very early. Usually these are quite lucrative because you're getting paid quite well to be in very remote locations and work very, very hard, but they're not sustainable. And as people go through their journey and get married, they really start going through a change, and they don't want to do this fly out because they're getting families. And so the result is we have a very mobile workforce, and that's the one aspect where a lot of these sites, it's so challenging to basically do this for over 5 to 10 years. There's a lot of research out there with regards to flying flat and your health, and this does put a lot of strain. So the other aspect that's very, very important when it comes to this is um, is basically, what do we do next? What can we actually do to help here? And this is what we Senseye does very, very well. Is it's capturing and creating a large language learning model specifically for a customer, and I think Senseye is leading the way here, where we are getting these large language learning models personalized. And with these isolated language learning models and populated with your own information, it becomes a very powerful tool. So, so yeah, we've got a mobile workforce, an aging workforce, and so we don't get people staying in one position for very, very, very long.
And I guess it's interesting because that just seems amazing to me that that's a thing where you have to fly in and fly out of a place of work and things like that. But obviously, Australia being the size of the country it is. Is there also sort of a reluctance on the younger generation? I know you mentioned as people grow up and get married and all the rest of it, have more of a reluctance. But is it just a generational shift anyway? From day one that there's more of an expectation on remote work, for example, rather than being on site more often.
Um, Look, it's I suppose when it comes to, if you go to these sites, I did it for a very, very long time, and it's something that I know is not for me, because you're working days and nights, but I work alongside people that have been doing it for a very long time, and um, they essentially create these homes away from home. If you go to a mine site, it's in the middle of nowhere, but at these camps, they'll have a tennis court and a basketball court, and they do everything that they can to maintain a healthy lifestyle, maintain your mental well being. And look, when it comes to people, all of them go for different reasons. The main reason is also is financial benefit, because you can set yourself up quite well, if you have if you do it for 3 or 4 years, and and as I said, these people don't get paid enough, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to doing this remote work. But it also creates a lot of opportunity. So if we look at the technology that's out in iron ore plants, in coal processing plants, and underground gold, it is very exciting. If you love automation or if you love technology, it's also very exciting because the mines specifically adopt technology quite well, and so you can really speed up your learning and your experience curve, because you actually put yourself out there, and it's and yeah. So that's another advantage of this. So it's very much up to individuals as to what they want. But what it comes down to, the underlying challenge that we have is we have got a mobile workforce that is moving, and we need to put systems in place in the industrial space to capture that rotating workforce. And this is essentially where I think Senseye is really leading the way.
Yeah, so let's that's a nice segue into it then. Let's talk about sort of knowledge capture and a way a tool like Senseye and generative AI can sort of support capturing the knowledge of, you know, long-term workers maybe thinking of leaving the workforce and using that to support the next generation that are coming through into the workplace.
Yeah, I talk about this quite often to people, and I really ask a couple of questions. But when I go into an organization and I ask, how do you share knowledge? And sometimes they think that's a strange question. And I'd say, and they were, what do you mean? And then I'd say, well, what's the last problem that you had on your shop floor? And they can usually name it. All right. And I'll say, okay, so what was the learning? 70% of the time, somebody might know the learning. And then I'll ask, so if this happens in 5 weeks' time, how do you actually how did that experience get shared? And that's the journey that is very, very important to articulate, because again, generative AI is become a buzzword again. But what we are really doing now is we are actually putting it into practice. And if I think about the first time I went to a mine site, I'll never forget one of the supervisors came up to me and said, Richard, what are you doing? So I said, well, and I was actually in I was in the section where they keep all the manuals. And so I said, I have a bit of spare time, and I really want to try and understand this machine. I've just started, so they didn't have anything for me. So I'm looking at the manuals, and they were like, why? So I said, well, I'm just trying to speed up my learning curve. And and I remember that interaction quite clearly, because a couple of weeks later, that same person came to me and said, Richard, the reason I came to ask you that question is because I did notice that you seem to have picked up everything so much faster than normal, and he was just asking how and why I've done that. Look, it was on Siemens equipment, and I'd been working on Siemens equipment all my life, and but it's my passion to learn as fast as I can, and getting to always try and position myself where I can provide value. So knowledge is power, and so if I had something like Sensei with the generative AI, that would have made it so much easier. And when we talk about what is changing, um, if I step out of Sensei actually taught me to stop reading manuals. So now you're just using Copilot. I will just drop in a manual. Siemens are very good at producing manuals. We've got 850 pages to show you how to tighten the nut and the bolt. And what I do is I go in, I just load the manual, and I extract the information as I need it. So this is a real game changer. And you can do this in an isolated instance like I'm talking about, where I'm just loading in a manual. And I won't get hallucinations and false readings, because it's pulling it out of that exact manual that I've loaded. And I think this is one of the biggest advantages for engineers, anybody interested in extracting information without reading manuals, because I've done that in the past. This is a real game changer. So now what we do is you step that up. So now you're not just looking at the manual, you're looking at the work records, you're looking at everything that your experienced team has put into your isolated model. So now you are actually getting information relative to your problem, and I don't have to now go and call this guy because he found this problem once. And no, it's captured properly and interactive. I can't stress enough the power of what generative AI has done in our interaction. I think that it's really changed the way we communicate, and you will see this coming into every product. But the question is, how deeply integrated is that generative AI into the product? You don't just want a chatbot that just spits out rubbish. You actually want something that's fully integrated into the product. So, and I think this is all leading to what we want out of the product, and we want to make decisions faster. So, and I think this is happening more and more. When people ask me what are we doing when it comes to Senseye, we're not selling a product. We're not selling software. We're selling an experience, and we're selling a value add. So who cares what the inner workings are? That's the customer doesn't want to know that anymore. The engineers and the data scientists do, but for 90% of the people interacting with this tool, they just want to be told something's wrong, be given a guide as to what it actually is, and then go and do a deep dive into that. And so essentially, you've got something now that helps you make a decision quicker and faster.
Yeah. No, I really liked how you related it to your own experience, Richard. And I've written one phrase down here which sort of summarised that sort of shift from what you were doing then, manually reading manuals to sort of co-pilots today. But there's still this element of keenness to learn, because if you, for example, you're proactive and we're reading through manuals and wanting to learn, but it's the same with a co-pilot as well, because you also need that drive to learn. Otherwise, it's just something sort of sitting there not being used, right? So I just thought that those two are quite similar, really, even though they're different sort of generational ways to learn. Let's say in a way, but would you agree with that?
100%. I think the key word in both of those is curiosity.
Yes.
And so I was speaking at an event a couple of weeks back, and there was many people in the room, and they were all from different industries, all different levels, from management to commercial to technical. And I kind of kicked off the conversation with, these presentations are brilliant to bring these people together. And one thing that I can promise you and guarantee is that all we have today, we have one thing in common. We are curious, and we want to provide better value tomorrow than we did today. That is what drives me, but also I hunt out these curious people, and also I think it's very, very important to acknowledge that the technology is moving so fast that that we, especially with a skilled workforce, we have the possibility of losing people, and the engagement of people. So technology can kill curiosity, because as soon as you feel the technology has surpassed your curiosity to understand something, you're done. And that's unfortunate. I see this all of the time when I'll go to different sites, and I can see if somebody is curious or if they're just there to get the job done and go home, and they don't want to learn anymore, and that's okay. But let's put systems in place to help this wave of technology that's hitting us. And Senseye is one of those tools that softens that blow to absorb the technology but still be user friendly. And so, like in the automation space, if I see somebody that's not interested at all at what I'm doing, I really like to try and find out when did that happen, because everybody that loses that curiosity, you'll actually find it was at a specific point in their career. It was when there was a step change. I see it all of the time when traditionally we used to, all inputs and outputs were hardwired. It was literally a piece of copper between everything. And then we moved over from hardwired to communication. So suddenly we didn't have to run a 101 core multi-core cable for 500 meters. We could just put a box either side and a communication device in between them. And that really broke this hardwire to communication. Some people struggled with that. They didn't know how to go from this binary to this communication. And anyway, so there are many different examples here. And but to answer your question, with regards to um, what I try and encourage, if I'm doing a speaking event, I try feed into the curiosity of everybody. If you feed their curiosity and you enable that, which Sensei actually does, because what Sensei does is it raises a little red flag to say, look, something's not right here. It's it's over 83% accurate, but it still needs a little bit of an assistant to make the decision. Is this just a process change? Do I need to smarten that up, or is this a real event? And so when you have somebody that's curious, and you have this augmented assistance with Sensei, you end up with this cultural change that people adopt. And this is what I've seen. So yeah, very, very good question. Thanks, Noel.
No, that's all right. I think curiosity is the word, really. I was just wondering to myself, is curiosity something you can create? But you were saying during your presentation are you trying to create or generate curiosity, or is it something you're trying to, sort of leverage other people's curiosity? If you know what I mean. Not sure that makes sense, but does that make sense? I think so.
Yeah, I think everybody by default is curious. I think over time it gets watered down. If you think about when you were younger, why? You just asked and asked and asked, and you wanted to understand, and and maybe the more you understood, the less questions you asked. So what I do to stimulate that curiosity is I try and feed into, at what point of your career did you stop becoming curious, and get you to think about that, because and essentially that's what I try to. Maybe when I retire, that's what I will write a book on, because that's what is a passion. I love people, and I love technology, and bringing the two together is essentially what drives me. That's why I'm in a digital transformation role, and how you bring these two together is not a science; it's an art, because everybody's different. Everybody has different drivers, and it's important to find out what those drivers are, and then address and feed into that.
And so I guess it leads quite nicely. Well, I mean, the whole topic we're talking today, but this idea of curiosity, because we can certainly describe our customer, BlueScope Steel, as curious. Well, that's one word for them. They're fantastic customer, Australian customer. And I know we recently did a podcast, which we'll share in the show notes afterwards. But it's actually where, I mean, they've really taken on this knowledge sharing part, you know, to extremes in a really fantastic way. So maybe you could talk about that a little bit and their experience, Richard, because you work with them very closely, of course, as well.
Yeah, I've been very privileged to witness the initiatives from BlueScope. So BlueScope are really trying to lead the way in digital transformation and adopting many new ways of doing it. So they identified Senseye very, very early, and basically rolled out Senseye across many different sites, and with a small core team driving consistent change on a weekly basis, they have gotten some very good results. And it's not just about the return on investment, as to the figures. And I'll go on to explain this because, when we talk about digital transformation, and I have these conversations with customers, I like to ask, what does success look like to you? And sometimes it would be like, well, we would like to save over 200 hours a year on that line. And I'll say, okay, so that's the direct goal. Can we maybe just expand this out to the wider benefits of doing that? So to achieve that, we are going to look at adopting Senseye. So we're going to be using AI, and we're going to be using new ways of doing things. So you are actually going to do a cultural change in your organization that pays for itself in many, many different ways. Yes, the direct result is saved downtime, but along the way, you've had a workforce upskill itself, adopt a new technology, and change the way that you are doing maintenance. This is not something that you can do overnight. You set the goalpost as hours saved, but the real value is in this transformation. And so, and if when you do this transformation over a steady period of time, we BlueScope are in a fortunate position now where we will have our weekly case review, and the team actually comes together energized, excited to share their wins in that week, share their frustrations for that week, and essentially they are using Senseye as a platform to share knowledge across 5 sites globally. So I work with the Australian team, the New Zealand team, and the Thailand team, and I make sure that all of those learnings get shared across those groups. And it's not often that you will sit in a meeting where people come invigorated to share their success about how vibration got detected, and they had the win. And this is what maintains success, is these little wins along the way. And yes, the podcast that you did with Chris is a brilliant example of this, where they used the co-pilot, and the co-pilot suggested something, and it was interactive, and they had a very good win. And it's easy to be skeptical, and just look at that in isolation and think, oh, that's just one. But you got to understand. It's important to know that this they are now fully enabled to do this at scale. And one of the benefits that we are seeing now is that we are getting so many more IoT sensors. So, for example, you rather than having an IoT sensor just monitor vibration, current, and voltage and all, you now have an IoT sensor that does periodic greasing. But that same sensor measures the amount of pressure during that greasing period, and so you now have a platform that the team are very comfortable with, and the technology is getting smarter, and they have the platform to absorb these new technologies with minimal effort. They have the AI all ready to go. They just have to bring the other sensors in, and they don't have to do little pilots and little projects. They've got a platform where they can bring new sensors in, and Senseye will do the analytics for them.
Yeah, so so it's going beyond some of the metrics you can put in a spreadsheet in terms of outcomes, but it's looking beyond that. Really, is what we're saying as well. So it's all very well to want to reduce downtime in a certain area, but there's, as you described, there's a much wider sort of picture here, which could change a whole company's perspective on maintenance. Let's say in this case.
Yeah, if we had to maybe, I love analogies, and if you take, let's say you go study software engineering, all right, and your goal is to get 75%, and and that's your certification. So that took 3 maybe 4 years to get. So you can think about your goal as the certificate, but don't forget about the change along the way. All right, the certificate is just basically confirmation of completion. But if you look at the change that you went through from before, how you actually, if you were doing software engineering, or the tools that you used that bleed out into everything that you do. And so this is why digital transformation, it's important to set a target, but don't forget about the soft changes along the way, because it's those changes that maintain the success. They set the culture, they set the benchmark, and as I say, this is our biggest challenge: is getting that adoption enabled. And so yeah, I love analogies. I hope that didn't make that makes sense. But when it comes to return on investment for Senseye, it is a very easy measurement, because it's the customer's feedback on what Senseye generates as an issue. You can't get, if you look at the hours saved, or the labor saved, or the dollars saved, or the CO2 saved, all of this is entered by the customer. So when we talk about results, if we're not getting the results that we declared, we will make sure that we work on fine tuning it and delving into it, because every week we look at the cases, and if it's not on target, then we make sure that we address those problems. And that's why Senseye, this software as a service, has really taught me. I'd say this is the biggest thing that I've learned with my journey with Senseye, is this software as a service, because we want to stay engaged with our customer throughout their journey. We don't just want to sell you a product and wish you luck. We actually want to go on this journey with you, and have an expert team to share this global knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely, and a really good sentiment to finish, actually, Richard. I know we're sort of coming up to time here as well, but I guess the other key word I'd say from this is curiosity. Wouldn't you agree? If you wanted to take one word out of our conversation.
Yes, curiosity. If there's one thing I try and teach my kids, it's be curious. Be curious. Be curious.
Same in marketing as well. To be fair, that's why otherwise you just stand still, don't you? So you've always be curious, always be curious. But no, for today, thank you, Richard. I know we've got plenty of new sessions planned in the new year as this is being recorded. This may well be published, or will be published in the new year anyway. But yeah, we've got plenty of sessions moving forward. I will link to the interview with BlueScope and Chris at BlueScope because that's a really great example. We focus on a particular success case, but it's a really great, it's a great story, and they're using it Senseye in such amazing ways. It's really worth a listen there. But for now, thank you, Richard, for your time and expertise and sharing that with our audience, and thank you everyone for listening. And we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Noel.
Please like and subscribe on all major podcast channels and find out more about Senseye Predictive Maintenance at Siemens.com.